One, this is your message for this week of May the 4th through the 8th. There'll be 3 embedded items as per usual in this video to earn yourself 110, because also in this video there is going to be a supplemental bonus. Your 3 embedded items are going to be 3 of my favorite fictional teachers that I have encountered in both movies and in books, but nevertheless, for all intents and purposes, this is the last week of new assignments. On Canvas, you can find chapter 24 items as well as, I think, a little thing on verbs. I had originally planned, and I said last week, that I was going to give you some sort of an assessment optional, like an exam next week, but I've decided not to. Instead, next week is going to be reserved for merely catching up. If you wish to do anything that you haven't gotten around to, I find that I am becoming swamped with, I know I keep saying I'm so busy, and yet still you're probably not seeing the results of it, but with the 3 different preps being AP Latin, Latin 2, and Latin 1, and trying to make, especially in Latin 2, with subjunctive stuff, Trojan War stuff, and then now the AP exam for Latin is coming up next Tuesday. I've been kind of trying to get a hold of that kind of stuff, but nevertheless, again, I apologize. I had said to many of you that this past weekend, would be the time that I'd be able to get caught up and update Infinite Campus, and I have not been able to do so. My hope is in the next day or so to be able to do that. But again, I am trying to do everything I can here at the last minute to provide opportunities for my AP Latin students to do well on the exam. Everything is so crazily different. Any of you taking an AP exam, you probably know, having the changes that are out there. But at any rate, I do plan to update it. And once again, my goal is that once I've updated it, either between now and through the weekend, I'm not going to look at it again until May 15th, which is the last day that I'll be looking at Canvas and items that are there, and then putting it into Infinite Campus. And then I'll also be adding between May 8th and May 15th all kinds of extra credit that you have coming to you. If you came and helped out at the Kirtaman tournament, stuff like that. If you would like to remind me of any extra credit that you think you have coming, feel free to text me, email me. That sort of stuff is more than welcome by me. So any of those sorts of things. So once again, I certainly miss everybody. I wish that we were back in school. We only have a little bit now until you get summer. We have no idea what next year is going to look like, but I hope that I see you in my class of Latin 2, and I've had a really good year so far. So what I'm going to do now, and by the way, your first embedded fictional teacher is Chips, C-H-I-P-S, Mr. Chips. He's from a book called Goodbye, Mr. Chips, and not that I even liked the book, but he was a Latin teacher. And so I read it when I was younger, and, I being a Latin teacher, certainly, Mr. Chips always sticks out in my mind. So don't put the Mr., just Chips. All right. So the last time that I had a supplemental bonus for you, it was items concerning food that I have been preparing and or eating in this time of social distancing and staying at home. And so I'm going to quickly run through it now. And then I have a new supplemental bonus for you, which I'll get to that topic in just a moment. But number 1, I asked about capers. I made a dish called chicken piccata that included capers, and I asked what fruit was it reminiscent of, and that would be lemon. It has kind of a lemon smell, flavor, zest to it. Number 2, BLTs we ate, which were bacon, lettuce, tomato. I asked of what part of the pig did the bacon come from. It is the belly, which is different than the stomach. Stomach is actually an organ, so belly is what I'm looking for there. Number 3, beef stroganoff did we eat, and from my grandmother's recipe, stroganoff is a Russian dish. The name stroganoff should give it away. Number 4, I asked about pesto that I am fond of eating with grilled chicken and pasta, angel hair pasta, and you need basil, olive oil, and ground up pine nuts. Pine nuts is what you need. So I asked what kind of nuts. Number 5, the meal that my children especially like is one that I've only eaten outside of the home at Waffle House, and you can hear the mention of this kind of item in the Outcast, So Fresh and So Clean. It's patty melts gator belts, patty melts, and Monte Carlos. I gave you the line, but leaving out patty melts. Number 6, challah. I made a Jewish variety of that you eat on the day after Passover is over, and that would be a type of bread. It has leavening in it, and so therefore you eat it the first night after Passover, because during Passover, no leavening. In other words, no sorts of items that allows the bread to rise. Number 7, if you eat something that is cordon bleu, it is going to be stuffed with cheese and ham, specifically Swiss cheese usually, but cheese and ham. Number 8, we ate at a place that specialized in a particular ethnicity of food, and that, of course, I said probably most Americans would most readily ask for a food of this ethnicity, kimchi, that is Korean. Number 9, I asked what kind of a bean was a chickpea that I'm still eating every single lunch, and that would be a garbanzo bean. And then finally, number 10, I eat every single meal in the morning of a weekday, oatmeal, and then I put frozen blueberries. Blueberries was the answer there. So our second name of fake teachers is from the movie The Emperor's Club. He was a teacher at a private school of ancient history, which is somewhat up my alley, and it's Mr. Hundert, Hundert, Hundert. That's your second name that you can easily get the 100. And if you attempt the supplemental bonus I'm about to give, you could easily get a 110 simply by putting all of that down. So, nevertheless, here it goes. And it's going to be, since this is Teacher Appreciation Week, teachers who have had an effect on me. I have some high school teachers. I have obviously college professors, maybe even an elementary school teacher in that mix. But that's the topic. So to show my appreciation. So number 1, probably the best teacher that I ever had was a woman I encountered in high school. She was fantastic. She was anciently old. She had taught not only my peers, she taught my peers' parents. There was even one peer I remember that she had taught the grandparent of him. And so her name was Miss Bell, and she was absolutely fantastic. She was very much near the end of her career as I came through. And what is the subject area that she taught? That's your question. I didn't much care for it until I came into her class. And once I did, I quickly realized what a subject could be in the hands of a great teacher. And she was maybe, pound for pound, all things considered, might have been just the greatest educator that I've ever encountered. Number 2, when I finished up my student teaching to become a teacher, I had to get a couple of professors to write a letter of recommendation. And of course, I went to a couple of Latin professors. I went to Dr. Curtis and Dr. Anderson. And one of the reasons is that, one, I had recently had classes with them, multiple classes with them. I thought that they probably thought that I wasn't horrible. And also, I had actually taught both of their children as a student teacher. And so therefore, they had the whole angle on me. And so I'm going to have 2 questions about them. Number 2, Dr. Curtis got his PhD from a particular university on the Eastern Coast. And to give you a hint about this university, the mascot is named a Latin name, Testudo, which is the Latin name or the Latin word for turtle. So what university did Dr. Curtis receive his PhD in classics? And the mascot of that university is named Testudo, which is the Latin vocab word for turtle. Number 3, the other was Dr. Anderson. Dr. Anderson might be my favorite professor that I had in all of college. He was enthusiastic. He was brilliant, obviously. And he was just a lot of fun. He really was. And just such a fantastic professor. And so one of his specific areas of study, like, for example, when you're a professor of that subject area, but there's a particular area of research that you specialize in. Like, for example, Dr. Curtis, I just mentioned, he did a lot of research on garum, which is a food condiment, a fish pickle sauce that the Romans made. And he's written books on the stuff. Well, my question concerning Dr. Anderson, what was his major area of expertise? And to give you a hint on this, the greatest ancient source that we have on this topic would be a author named Vitruvius. You can receive the Pritzker Prize for this field of endeavor. And I suppose I'll give you one more. Since this is Latin 1, you might not know, but Frank Lloyd Wright is probably the most famous person in U.S. history. Even though I read something interesting recently about Frank Lloyd Wright, he was a big-time jerk. He suffered from megalomania and other sorts of mental issues, but people usually don't know that about him. It was in a National Geographic that I wrote or read. Number 4. I currently live in a place that, ironically, the school that I am closest to, and with maybe 4 or 5 hits of a golf ball from my house, I could land a golf ball on the campus of this school. And at this school that I did my student teaching at, I had the great fortune of having as my mentor teacher Gail Polk. She was fantastic. Brilliant, and just I could not have asked for a better experience. But at what school did I do my student teaching? I currently live within 6-7 hits of a golf ball of that school. And to give you a hint, it is a school of single A classification. So what school did I do my student teaching at? Number 5, let's talk about my Latin teacher. When I was in high school, I thought my Latin teacher was one of the smartest guys I'd ever seen in my life. I hope maybe for some of y'all that kind of rings familiar. But he was fantastic, even though I was brutally obnoxious with him. His name was Nolan Ernest Watford, and he was a rara avis. That's Latin for a rare bird. He certainly was. But what university that borders, it's a state university that borders Georgia, did he attend? Now, to give you a hint on this, I had the great fortune of traveling with the Quiz Bowl team to a Quiz Bowl tournament out of the state of Georgia this year in the month of December, and we stopped by the campus of this university to take a picture, tweeted about it, and sent it, actually, directed it to a particular current teacher at Eastside that all the Quiz Bowlers, all the people on the Quiz Bowl team, the 3 boys particularly, have as a teacher. So what university did my Latin teacher go to? Number 6. She's not fictional, but there is a teacher named Miss Kerwin that appears in literature, and it's an autobiographical novel that she appears in. And in many ways, I want to be just like this teacher. Her name is Miss Kerwin, and she appears in the novel I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. I read it about 10 years ago in my adulthood for the first time, and it was just so great. It was really fantastic. And so the question then, who is that author who unfortunately has died within the last 6-7 years? Maybe even more recent than that, of the novel I Know Where the Caged Bird Sings, who has Miss Kerwin in that novel. Oh, she's fantastic. Number 7. Of all the elementary school teachers that I had, the one that probably sticks out the most is Miss Henry. I had her for 2nd grade, and she was a big fan, it seemed, of Little Eric, my 2nd grade self, which was somewhat of not a pivotal year, but it was the year of the Challenger disaster occurred in that year, other things of that nature. And Miss Henry used to always call me the All-American Kid. She thought, you're just the All-American Kid. And so she called me the name of a baseball player. So, let's say she would, if you think that somebody like Mike Trout might be the All-American Kid, that's what she would call me, Mike Trout. But the person that she called me was the singular baseball idol of anybody living in Georgia at that time. And certainly ask any fellow roughly my age, anywhere around my age, of who their baseball idol was growing up, and they'll probably name this guy. So who did the 2nd grade teacher, Miss Henry, always refer to me as, because she said that I was an All-American Kid, or whatever kind of silliness that is. Number 8, the person from whom I have probably received the most education, that is, that I've taken the most classes from, it might be Dr. Keith Dix. from UGA. I don't know how many classes I took with Dr. Dix, but he was fantastic. Um, and again, this has to do with the area of specialty. Dr. Dix was noted for his research in a particular entity, the public entities of ancient Rome. And to give you a hint, probably the most famous of these was in Alexandria, Egypt of the ancient world. But truly the greatest one of these entities in the history of mankind belongs to Congress. And so what is that entity that Dr. Dix specialized in research? Number 9. Back when I was in college, I took a series of courses at UGA called Science for Non-Science Majors. And that is that they were courses specifically designed such that you did not have the tedious, I mean, we still had to balance equations. There was still stoichiometry. There was still, memorizing the functions of the cell. There was still, calculating the acceleration due to gravity. There was still, trying to figure out the nature of rocks and minerals. And so those were the 4 areas that they had taught. There was chemistry and biology and physics and geology, all wrapped up in 1 year long, over 3 quarters or semesters, if you would like. And recently, and over the past few years, I'd be at the Publix where I live here, and I would see one of those professors who would never remember me. And also, too, what's going to be shocking is that when you see these people, your teachers and professors, and it's decades later, for me it's like 25 years later, they look so shockingly old. I'm sure it will be for me as well, if anybody sees me down the line. Because if, let's say, you're already in your 50s or so, and 25 years later, and all of a sudden you're in your 70s or 80s or even 90s. And I saw one of those professors. His name was Dr. Darwin Smith. And there would be no way that he would ever recognize me from 25 years ago. And I was just passing through. It wasn't like I was a scientist studying under him or something like that. Now, when I run into my Latin professors around town, like, just the other day, when I say that, it's a couple of months ago, I ran into Dr. Anderson, who, in Target, and he immediately, hey, how are you doing? And we, would chat and whatnot. But, not for just simply taking. But the reason being is that all 4 of those professors, and I'll name them, it was Dr. Smith, Dr. Meltzer, Dr. Porter, and Dr. Holland. They were so great and did a great job, and they were just fantastic. And so I went up to Dr. Smith, and I leaned in, and I said simply to him when I was looking at him, I said, "You look like a blank, and I need you to fill in the blank, because that blank is what he is." Like, for example, if I were to lean in and say to, I don't know, let's one of history professor that I have, I'd lean in and I say, "You look like a historian." Well, at any rate, Dr. Smith then looked up and said, yes, I am. I must have taught you. And we chatted for a couple of seconds. And so that's your question. You look like a blank. And I will say this, that I did not like that subject when I was in high school, particularly. And in college, it was probably my least favorite of the sciences, to be honest. Then finally, number 10. Number 10 boils down to the fact that probably, when it boils down to it, the greatest teachers that you will ever have in your life, in many ways, are your parents. They're the ones that start teaching you from the moment that you were born. They teach you how to speak. They're the ones who taught you your language. They really did. And they will never stop teaching you throughout your life. And so the last question is simply, my father's first name is my middle name. And what is it? What is my father's first name? I don't know that I can give you any clue on that. That would make it easier for you to get. Nope, you're just going to have to hope for the best. My middle name, I'll tell you, it starts with the letter D. How about that? My middle name is my father's name. And so thank your parents for being a great teacher to you. And I certainly miss all of you in class. Hope you take a stab at this bonus. I appreciate so much those of you who are still engaged. And please be patient with me in catching up in Infinite Campus and the like, which I hopefully will do, seeing as there's going to be no new content for Latin 1 next week. So your last name is a character in the Ecce Romani, Palaemon. I'll spell that for you. Palaemon. And man, does he get angry at Sextus, which is deserving that Sextus should be gotten angered at. But answer those three things. There'll be a quiz on Canvas. And if you try the supplemental bonus, 110, free quiz just for watching. I appreciate you. And again, if anybody is so wish, we'll have, and there's no reason for it, but we'll do it anyway because I'm just so happy to see you when we do it. Zoom meeting at 1 p.m. as per usual on Thursday. You get a free 100 for showing up. And I hope to see you then. So that's tomorrow. Until then, hope everybody is safe, hope everybody is well, and hope that I'll be able to see you in person sooner rather than later. Bye.